Welcome to She Rebel Radio, a community-driven podcast dedicated to supporting women to unlearn conventional rules and create businesses of significance. Each season, She Rebel Radio brings you insights and advice from noteworthy women entrepreneurs who strive to create more meaning, impact, and purpose. Now here is your host, Lulu Minns.
Welcome to episode 83 of She Rebel Radio, Creating a Quiet Revolution with Linzi Boyd. Linzi is a serial entrepreneur, international speaker and author of Brand Famous. Also the founder of Bob Earth, which is an organisation which builds brands to shift industries. Linzi advocates in the 21st century the revolution can now be led by people and not institutions. Her mission is to unite purpose-driven movement towards global unity, and she believes that purpose is our new trading currency. Get ready to join the quiet revolution in today's episode of She Rebel Radio. Welcome, Linzi. It's great to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, I'm really excited to speak to you and to talk about your background, which is in building brands rather than branding.
Yeah.
What is the difference and how did that all start for you?
Oh, what a good question to kick off with. I go around the world. I travel around the world and speak on stage, not at the moment. But I've been teaching people for a number of years the difference between brand and branding. Your brand is your business model. I say it's the end to end of the whole of the business model. The brand, the product, the channel, the sales system. Think about your brand as a modern day business model. And your branding is the logo, the look and feel, the visual tone, everything you do after you've built the brand, the business model.
So it's what comes afterwards. The branding is much more of a kind of household kind of name, isn't it, in terms of something that people think they understand?
Yeah. So once you've built out your brand-led business model, like what is it? What's the growth strategy? How are you increasing the value? How are you leading that with purpose and impact? How are you driving that into everything that you do? Then you tend to go to a branding agency and go, right, what do I want to look like? What's the visual tone? How do I want to show up? And they will then make you look great and think about what the branding is that sits around the business.
Which is usually where people start and go wrong.
So the biggest mistake that people make is they start with the branding and they forget to do the brand, which is the business model, which was what I wrote my book on. How do you create a brand famous business, which is linking the brand as your business model, the asset, the value, the products, intangible and tangible, the channel system and the sales process, and then go and work on all the branding and the logos.
Amazing. And how did that start for you? How did you become an expert in building brands?
Look, I left school at a very young age of 15 and I had no qualifications. And although I was bright at school, but I really didn't connect with school. And so I decided to start my first business at the age of 18. And I set up a retail shop in the north of England, which is where I'm from. Mm-hmm. And I had a very famous footballer's wife, and I learned the power of brand, the power of fame, actually, what people's fame could do for your business. And I learned on the job about, building a business at a very young age. Mm-hmm. And then at the age of 20, I'd sold that business. I set my second business up, a retail, a manufacturing business. We manufactured shoes. We saw a gap in the market for fashion sneakers. And to cut a long story short, we set up 7 distribution channels around the world, had them in the design museum as design classics. And I sold the business to Caterpillar when I was 24.
Oh, wow.
And at that age, I literally realized the power of brand, the power of how you could set a global business up and link it with, like I just said to you, what's the DNA, what's the true essence of this business? But how do I increase the value? How do I increase the sales, the awareness, but drive it into the commercial business model? So in my third business, when my friends were going to college and university and I was on to my third business, I was very well known in the industry for building, renovating, and refreshing some of the most famous brands on the high street. So I brought back Pringle of Scotland, that was a brand that was dying, a golfing brand, to a brand on Bond Street. And then from that, I brought back, I worked with Birkenstock, Wrangler, Lacoste, Urban Outfitters, many different retail brands. Yeah. And I was either known for building a brand, like Superga at the time was a very small footwear brand that we took from one retail shop to 130 retail shops in 4 months.
Wow.
Renovating brands, like I said, like Pringle, Gibbs and Hawkes, Wrangler, and so forth, or refreshing brands. So I worked with Superdry, G-Star on really helping them to exceed the fame that they already had and kind of keep them really relevant. And so I recognize that power of brand and the brand as your business model and how to translate that into the market.
Yeah, and we hear so often, don't we, with really successful entrepreneurs that they don't like school. Why do you think that might be?
It's interesting because then I went up and set up a business school. So from one not liking of school to the other.
I'm sure you had your own brand around that business school. Of course. Absolutely. So you believe revolution can now be led by people and not institutions. What do you mean by that? And why is it important that people recognise the power of brand?
Well, when I moved from 17 years of building, renovating and refreshing some of the most famous brands on the high street, I then moved into my fourth business, which is my business today, which is Bob Earth. And Bob Earth is what we describe as the first purpose-led platform that connects businesses all around the world to trade with each other around an impact, around a purpose. And when I transitioned from my third business, I have to say I was pretty fed up because I'd been building these businesses just off commercial gain. Mm-hmm. And so my fourth business, I decided to set up this technology platform, but also a business school. And the business school teaches any industry sector how to switch their business model over from 20th century thinking to 21st century thinking, mm-hmm. and obviously increase their awareness and the value and the sales and so forth, but lead with purpose, legacy, and impact. And the biggest problem that I saw was that institutions were never going to make the change in society. And that I saw this a long time ago, many years ago. Yeah. And I wanted to shift the world into a new era through the eyes of brands. I recognized that we could really build these brands, build these businesses that were going to go and impact change in the world. Mm. And so what if we could do that and shift many different industries to make that happen?
Absolutely. And with the 20th century thinking, is that around the commercial gain, and the 21st century thinking is around purpose, as you said?
Yeah, well, so what I say to people is, look, I'm well up for people making money and increasing valuations. That's what I do for a living. That's my day job. Yeah. But what I say to people now is do it with commercial and cultural. So increase the sales awareness value. That for me is an absolute given, and that's what we're here to do. Mm-hmm. But link the cultural system also. And that means think about what your legacy is. Why are you here? Remember why you're here and why you're on this planet. Mm-hmm. Drive in the purpose of what you want to do. And then use the brand culture, the people inside the organization and around you to then go and influence the market. And that's very different from my old world, which was just drive up the commercial side of the business. Now it's about leading with purpose and legacy, but driving it into the end-to-end of a business model. So that means don't just have purpose as a marketing strapline, which is what a lot of businesses tend to do, mm-hmm. but actually have it in an ethical business model. So build responsible businesses and drive it into absolutely everything that you're going to do.
Yeah. And what do you think is going to happen to businesses that either don't take on that cultural aspect of purpose, as you said, or the ones that, pay lip service to it as a marketing tool rather than it really running through the core of everything that they do? Is there going to be space for those businesses in the 21st century?
We talk about the conscious uprising and a conscious awareness. The conscious consumption has just happened around the pandemic, and the recession has sped up the whole trend. So this was always a trend that was coming anyway. So it's not that the pandemic and the recession has created the trend, but it's sped up the trend. What that means is that people are now consciously consuming in a way that they have never really engaged with on a mainstream level before. And that means that not only is the younger generation doing that, which, to be honest, they're a lot better at doing it than we are, but now the older generation are also consciously consuming. So they're not only looking at a website and going, oh, I like that. They're now looking at the website and going, I like that. Where's the transparency in the supply chain? Where's it being made? Can I see that it's sustainable? How is that being delivered in? Are they looking after their people? All the different things that people are now caring about more, and also thinking about, am I going to bring that into my home? Do I need to consume that? Can I really purposefully buy something and not just have it as fast fashion anymore, or throwaway fashion that we may have done in the early 90s? And the mindset is completely changing. So due to that, 20th century businesses that are still trading in an old way will get left behind, because consumer demand is actually driving the conversation forward. And so they need to move with the times and move their businesses into a new era of trade, which is how we describe it.
Yeah, and as you said, the pandemic hasn't created this, but it's sped it up, and it's brought, you know, this conscious awareness into a lot of people. It's become more of a mainstream conversation. Did that, you know, have a real, an even more aha moment for you in terms of, yeah, I've known this, I've seen this, I've been working with this, and now we're going to see it really, you know, roll forward with the pandemic and where we've been over this last 18 months, which none of us could have predicted?
Yeah, you know, that's a good question. Look, we've been running these business schools, like I said, around the world since 2016, and I've had over 5,500 businesses come through different schools. Okay. And when the pandemic hit, so we've always been teaching this, you know, switch your business model over to 21st century thinking, drive a responsible, ethical business model, drive commercial and cultural, all the things that I've talked about. And we get incredible results with different industries. But when the pandemic hit, we had over 2,000 businesses come around us all over the world. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these businesses, some of them had been through the business schools and they came, you know, for real help and support to go through the pandemic and the recession. And other ones hadn't. But they came from many industry sectors, some startup, some scale up, some established, depending on the different industries. And what I recognized was not only did they lead with a human response, not a sales response, they were able to put their arms around a community that was already there. And they were able to pivot very quickly and innovate the whole of their business model, the whole of the customer journey, but not sell to people in the early stages, which is what a traditional business would have done. Yeah. And due to that, we had, I mean, gosh, if you go on to my LB Presents on YouTube, I've interviewed over 40 of these businesses now. Amazing. And a lot of them were dropping 90, 100% in revenue and are now recording record sales. A number of them got on television programs, got big interviews because of the work that they were doing, leading with purpose and not just leading with sales. And the results are exponential, actually, in comparison to what we describe as a push business model that just leads with selling.
Yeah. I often say actually contraction is the key to expansion. And it sounds like that's a great example of that.
Oh, lovely term. Very nice.
Yeah, there's a big drop, but here comes the big rise. So that's amazing. So rewinding a moment in terms of you, following running a successful communications agency, I believe, you wrote the book Brand Famous in 2014. And in that book, you share a 5-step process required to achieve standout brand status. Can you share a small part of that process with us, and where it's important to start with that?
Yeah, so I'd always run for 17 years this process. And look, I'd run it in the morning, I could be in with G-Star, and in the afternoon, I could be in with a very, very early stage growth business. But for me, the process was always the same. It was a system that I had created and built and run it with thousands of businesses. And I transitioned this system into Bob and the curriculums that we now run. And the same system applies. And it's a 5-step system that really enables people to grow and scale a business, to lead with impact, but also drive up the commercial side. And so the first one is really called Discover. And that's where your brand DNA sits. And you really want to discover 3 things. So the first one is, what's the asset? What's the value that sits inside your business that you're going to increase the valuation by? And that means everybody has herbs and spices that you have that really are unique for your business. The second one is then, what's the purpose? And you've heard me say that a few times, to remember who you are, because it's the only thing that will get you out of bed in the morning. And if you link the asset with the purpose, then you're able to increase the asset and then also drive it from a purpose impact standpoint. And the third one is the who, but I talk about this from the emotional connection of the customer and not the sales connection. Mm-hmm. And I come from a trends background. So I teach people that we're now in a who era. And I could provide your audience with a video if they would want that. I can get that for you. Yeah. And it talks about a trend moving from the why era to the who era. And it's all about connecting emotionally with the customer. So you stop selling to the customer and you get a response from them when you start engaging with them, which is, oh my gosh, you know me. How do you know me so well? And in a broad nutshell of Discover, they're the 3 main elements that you're looking to achieve. You then move into Create. Create is then looking at what products you're going to create, both tangible and intangible. Connect means then, how are you going to connect that with your channel system? So your route to market, what partnerships that you're going to create, what culture do you have, what digital channels, what reach, how are you going to scale your business? Communicate is then, what sales process do you have? What campaigns are you going to drive through? Not sales-led campaigns, but brand-led campaigns. What's the pricing? What's the packaging that you're going to wrap around this? So you can build a business model that pulls the market into you rather than you having to push onto the market. Mm-hmm. And the last step, which is one that most people miss, is evaluate. And that's your evaluation set. So how do you look at your ROI and understand it from a cultural aspect and a commercial aspect to really build and drive the brand equity value of your business, so that you will have a commercial return, but you'll also have a cultural return at the same time.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I definitely highly recommend that our listeners take a good look at your book, as well as watching the video that you said that you'd share. And we will put that in the show notes below. Now, that concept, as you said, the process that you've been, delivering to businesses throughout your career, and has become a foundation of Bob Earth, which you've told us more about. Who is Bob for? What kinds of businesses does it range? For a broad range of businesses that you've taken through your business school and this process?
So we fondly refer to them as agitators of change. Mm-hmm. And what that means is that we have many businesses come through. So traditional businesses, tech businesses, disruptor businesses, lifestyle businesses. But what I would tend to find is the person in the business, whether it's a founder, CEO, C-suite, the marketing department, whoever it is, they're tending to be agitating for change. Mm-hmm. They're tending to be scratching to do something different. And we say that they're in three categories. They're either in build, renovate, or refresh. And you'll see that at the beginning of my book. And a build businesses, they're early stage growth. They're looking to build. They're excited. They really they're hungry. They want to understand the process, and they really want to build out their business. A renovate business is somebody that tends to be more established. They've either seen fame and they want to exceed that. So they were a big business before and they've dropped, or they're stuck and they're really needing to re-renovate the whole of their business model. Or a refresher business, somebody that's doing well, can have been trading a number of years and they're really looking to scale up now. They want to know how to grow, how to expand, and they are already doing a lot with their business and they want to stay ahead of the game and scale up and be a real leader and disruptor in their market.
Amazing. And why do we need to move towards global unity? I know that's a word I see across your brand.
Yeah.
And what part, and it's definitely a word that I resonate with, and what part do women have to play in creating it?
Look, everything that underpins Bob is unity. And it's the real reason why I started Bob, because my belief system was the highest spiritual context is unity. You don't get higher than unity on any level in any field. And we believe that the him and her conversation is integral to us getting to where we want to be. Now, that can be a female energy and a male energy. So for me, that can be woman, man. It doesn't need to be a physical man and woman.
Yeah,
there's a female and male energy that plays out in something. And from having a number of businesses, look, I've never worked for anyone else. So I've only ever worked for myself. What I can say to you is, and being a female founder and a female entrepreneur, I never try and be something that I'm not. So I have a female energy, I have a male energy, like we all do. Yeah. And in our business, we play to the strength of who we are as our DNA. So sometimes I'll go into a meeting and I will lead, and my male partner will then, play a different role, and vice versa. And we do the yin and yang of each other, and we do that through the whole of the business, depending on where we are, who we're sat with, what it needs. And it's not around ego. We leave the ego at the door. And it's the same when we go out and we teach businesses to build a business. And we ran a summit, I'm not sure if you're aware, in November, which was called Unite on Purpose. And we had a 24-hour live summit where the United Nations opened it for us. We had 57 speakers from around the world. And we ran it live in Australia, America, and the UK. And it went round the world.
Were you up for that whole 24 hours?
I was up for most of the 24 hours, and then I handed the baton to my Australian partners at 11 o'clock at night, and then I got up again at 5. Oh, well. And they handed the baton back to me. And we did the race to the end, where we closed the summit at 8 a.m. the following morning. And it was all about our whole thing was uniting the world on purpose and unity. And our main criteria is, how do we move people from being silo, which is where we've all been for so many years? My purpose, this is what I'm here to do. Move people from an I conversation to a we conversation, and actually enable industries, which is why the platform is here, to come together, campaign together, and actually go out and shift industries into a new era. And that's the main crux of the word unity, and how we actually move the world, shift the world into a new era through the eyes of brands, through the eyes of these people.
Yeah, incredible. And thank you for sharing about the masculine, feminine energy. It's definitely something that comes up time and time again on She Rebel Radio, and something that many of our listeners are very interested in and want to learn more about. So thank you for sharing.
It's a main. I have to say, I think I had two older brothers when I was growing up, and but my mum is a very talented seamstress, so I would be dressed in like really beautiful dresses. So I was halfway up a tree with and in a beautiful dress, but always with a football next to my feet, and I think I recognised that yin and yang of female male energy that lived inside of me, and I've always embraced that. I've never shied away from that, and it's carried me through all my working career. And I think it's been the thing that I've always loved being in business and being in business with men and women, and really found the power of that and unity, and when you can play to your strengths, both male and female energy that lives inside of you.
Yeah, and I feel like you articulate that so well. That's one of the reasons I reached out to you to be on She Rebel Radio, because I can see that thread running through and really communicating. And you reminded me of my niece, actually. She's got two older brothers and sounds very similar. For sure. And also being the youngest, I'm the youngest of three. I think we automatically fall into the rebel role usually.
Oh gosh, yeah, maybe that's why I've started a quiet revolution.
I don't think you have to make your voice heard, don't you, being one of three, at the bottom of three. Definitely. So I know that bringing nature and technology together in harmony is important to you, which is a little bit of the feminine and masculine balance there as well, which I see nature as a very feminine, energy, because that's what we're talking about, energy here. But why is it critical that we bring nature and technology together, and how can we start to do that?
So I come from a trends background, and and in my third business, the consumer business, I got really good at, and I think that's why I kept brands for so many years. I got very good at spotting gaps in markets and moving these businesses into future gaps. And so I'm forever, and you can ask anyone around me in the business, in Bob and so forth, I'm forever spotting gaps and trends, and I'm often doing trend talks and reports. And one of the trends that I've really seen is this nature with a fusion of technology. And what that means is, obviously, people have heard we're in the fourth revolution around digital revolution, digital technology, how it's going to lead us into this new space. But at the same time, there's the other side that people are really drawing back to nature. And what that means is, the conscious awakening, where people are recognizing, how do we not only look after the planet, but actually recognize ourselves as these beings in the planet. Mm-hmm. And the second side is spirituality driving into the mainstream. So my next book that I'm writing at the moment is around spirituality and business combined. And it's this real topic of nature and technology, and how we are living in a space of conscious awakening, which is what I spoke about earlier. But how do we drive that and lead that with the business conversation? And that means there will be such high tech innovation like we've never ever seen before as we come into high growth between 2021 and 2031. And at the same time, we will have this massive pull towards spirituality, nature, conscious awakening, and there will be this joining of the two. And that's the really interesting area that I'm watching over the next 10 years and participating in as a human being on this planet.
Yeah, and seeing how that hashes out, definitely. I think we've talked about the pandemic, haven't we? And I refound my connection to nature when I left legal practice, and it's been a massive thing for me. And to see other people discovering that within the pandemic has been amazing to see.
I think also, like you said, you've moved to Cornwall recently, and the trend around where we work, how we work, digital natives used to be for people without kids. And now family natives, new term, is around how do you go with your family and be a native. And you're able to now do that because you no longer need to work in an office anymore. And so the way that we work has completely changed. You can move to somewhere in the countryside and have a different way of life. You could move to Australia and actually probably still keep your job and take your family with you and do that for a year, because the way within which we worked has changed. And so that nature piece that drives into how you want to work, the lifestyle that you want to have, has transitioned. And due to the pandemic, that trend has sped up.
Yeah, it has, absolutely. And I've been visiting Cornwall for 25 years. I'm kind of wishing I bought down here earlier now. With the market being as crazy as it is, but it
absolutely
is, yeah, and knowing that the shift was going to happen, but again, not seeing how it would be sped up so quickly by the pandemic. But you've already talked a little bit about being a woman in business, and we talked about masculine, feminine energy. What's been the biggest challenge for you being a woman in business, and what advantages has that brought as well? Which I know you've answered some of that, but is there anything else that you want to add to that?
It's interesting. I've never seen a challenge around being a woman in business, and maybe because I started at such a young age. And with my second business, I was in a factory in Korea at the age of 21 with only men manufacturing shoes. And maybe because I had two older brothers, so you had to rough it up and kind of, hang out with the boys quite a lot.
Yeah.
But because of that, it never entered my head, to be fair, until later on in my third, even in this fourth business, when there was a real conversation around women in business and, what have been the trials and tribulations. What I have said to people, and when I'm on stage and people say, what do you do if, you get that kind of demon in your head saying you're not good enough or something like that? And I would often say, when I was younger, Veronica is her name, by the way, and Veronica would come into my head and she might say something to me like, oh, you can't do that, or you're not good enough. And what I would do is I'd kick Veronica in the back of the car and I'd tell her to shut the up, and I'm driving the car. And so what I would often say to women in that space or whatever is, if you ever have that person in your head, or if you ever are sat in a meeting and you think, oh, I'm not good enough, I shouldn't be here, this should be for somebody else, give that person a name, chuck them into the back of the car and tell them to shut up until you've finished running that meeting.
Take back control. I'd love to know. I do similar, actually. I call that voice Louise, because it's my far more serious self than Lulu. It's much more fun and just up for anything. And why Veronica?
I don't know. I think it came from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and it was that girl Veruca Salts. And I thought, well, I won't call her Veruca, so I'll call her Veronica.
I love it. I was going to say either that or Veronica. I'm trying to think what else that reminded me of. But we were talking about Charlie and Chocolate Factory in the last She Rebel Radio episode. Actually, that film keeps on coming up. But
I think it was that girl, that kind of she gets sucked up by a pipe, or so she was obnoxious, basically. And that's my kind of like alter ego, that one that I think you need to shut up and get in the back of the car. I'm driving this car, not you, love.
Yeah, definitely. Or it reminded me of the film, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Heathers, with Christian Slater in it and Winona Ryder, and they're all called, all the cows at the bitches at the school are called Veronica.
Oh, are they? Oh no, I'll have to watch that. I love
there's three of them. It's a brilliant vintage classic. It's I think it's on Netflix at the moment, so definitely.
Oh, that's good.
It's a funny one. So it's been amazing to have you. What is next for you? What is next for Bob Earth, and where can we find you?
Well, we've got our Unite on Purpose Summit, the second one in the 5 series. So we launched the first one on November 17th. The second one is November 17th. So anybody that would like to come and join us, uniting the world on purpose for 24 hours live, come to bobearth.com and you'll be able to sign up there. But we're very excitedly launching our first board game. And the board game is called The Race to Impact the World. And again, you can go onto Bob Earth, you'll be able to find it on there. But we're also setting up an Amazon shop, and it'll be selling in places like John Lewis and so forth. And the Race to Impact the World is a family board game that teaches the parents actually as well as the kids, but it teaches them how to race to impact the world. And you go around the board game and you build your Google fame. So how you're going to show up around what you want to be known for online. And it teaches you around showing up online. Then it builds out your industry fame and how it teaches you about building a business around impact. And you race to be guru famous. And that way you're trading in your money for impact points and building your foundation. And the first person that gets the most impact points wins the game.
Incredible. So, that sounds like the new Christmas game, and the kind of opposite of Monopoly in terms of it. Again, it's all about the commercial gain, isn't it? And knocking people off the board and taking down their houses.
So that was the kind of premise of it. It was a mixture between Monopoly and the game of life. And so I'm proud of it because it's taken me a couple of years to design and build it. And it actually comes out pre-Christmas, ready for Christmas presents. So anybody that would like to buy that, the Race to Impact the World. But of course, come on to Bob Earth and join. If you want to build your brand to grow a business and impact an industry to shift the world, then come on to Bob Earth and you can join one of the classrooms. I think we've got a classroom starting in September. Or come on to the Bob Earth Facebook group, the community, and you can chat with over 2,000 purpose-led businesses in there.
Amazing. All sounds so exciting, and great preparation for the board game, as well as all the other things. And any last pearls of wisdom that you want to share before we go?
The main thing that I would say is my daughter did a talk at school recently, and she nearly won it, and it was called I Can. Mm-hmm. And it's always been a motto that we've lived by in my household, which is many people think that they may not be smart enough, they may not be the best, they haven't got enough wisdom. But the main thing I would say to you is I can, because you do not need to be the smartest and you do not need to be the best, but you do need to be the most determined and have the most belief in yourself, because then when somebody tells you you can't and somebody tells you you won't, trust me, you will and you can.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Linzi. It's been incredible to have you.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. And I'll get you a board game over in October when it comes out.
Oh, yes, please. I do love board games. You could probably tell how excited I am. Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Thanks for listening to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for women unlearning conventional rules and creating their businesses of significance. She Rebel Radio is executive produced by award-winning coach and advocate Lulu Minz. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit subscribe. And if you're feeling social, find Lulu Minz and the She Rebel Radio community using the links below.